Dee Watkins is an editor-at-large for Salon. He's been published in the New York Times, The Guardian, Rolling Stone, everywhere. He has a master's in education from Johns Hopkins and an MFA from the University of Baltimore, which is where he now teaches. He's the founder of the BMORE Writers Project, and he is the author of 2 books, The Beast Side and The Cook Up, which is out in paperback just a few weeks ago, and is why we're all here tonight. I first encountered his work when I worked at Penn Faulkner, which I hope you all know. Penn Faulkner runs a program called Writers in Schools, which does exactly what it sounds like, in DC and Baltimore, and the high school teachers we worked with could not get enough of Dee Watkins. You know this. We had so much demand for his work and just rave reviews from teachers and from students. He has so many fans in DC, including Tony Lewis, who is in conversation tonight. Tony is the author of Slugg. He is a community activist and leader. His work has been featured on CNN, BET, and in the Washington Post. He is the winner of many awards, including the Presidential Call to Service Award, and we are so glad to have him here tonight. So please join me to welcome Dee Watkins and Tony Lewis Jr.
So I'm thankful to be here, and I'm honored to be sharing the stage with this brother Tony Lewis. I'm a huge fan of his work, his personality, his activism, and how much he loves his city. He loves DC like I love Baltimore, like like I love ice cream, like I hate ice cream being an almond milk. That's how much he loves DC. That's how much I love my city, and I think that love for our cities and what we really want to see and what we believe in is the reason why, we're going to be able to have a great conversation here tonight. And we'll get into that, but before I get started, I'm super fortunate that my younger brother's here. He's one of the best poets I ever heard in my life, and I'm not biased. I think you guys are going to love him. You're going to love his work. And before we get started, I want to let everyone know, my book is here for sale. Tony Lewis' book is here for sale. And Kondwani Fidel's book, Raw Rules, is here for sale. So, we just 3 people trying to make it, trying to show love, and just trying to deliver truth in the era of alternative facts. So, before we get into this, Kondwani Fidel.
I'm gonna perform 2 poems for y'all. My name is Kondwani Fidel, born and raised in East Baltimore. I'm a Virginia State University alum. I just got accepted into the MFA program at the University of Baltimore, so I'm gonna be going in August. I'm also extremely poor, so if anybody know any scholarships available, definitely plug me with that. So yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and get into it, and I'm not gonna use this microphone. All right, so this first poem that I'm gonna do, it's my most recent poem. And it's called What the Fuck is Black Girl Magic? Little Ebony was skipping down the block, hopping over empty Dorito bags, dirty diapers, crushed up Zans and soda cans. The sun splashed on our red barrettes all brazy. God, look what you made, a beautiful black baby. She waved her small palms. I said, what's up, where you going? I see your black girl magic glowing. She looked confused and said, what the fuck is black girl magic? I zoned out and entered into another world. I said, you're black girl magic, you're black and you're beautiful. She said, no, not me. Only white girls is beautiful. Trapped in a cubicle, but this is what society do to you. Your nappy hair, your black skin, and big lips is depriving you of self-love, driving you to the mental health club. Shucking and jiving, subscribing to whiteness is hell, cuz. Ebony doesn't use words like absolutely. She doesn't listen to Chance the Rap or Erykah Badu. Her playlist, Young Dolph, Moose, and Boosie. Ebony doesn't follow trending hashtags. Ebony is dealing with brain damage that stemmed from her lead paint poisoning that the landlords gave her. It's been 6 weeks and she wondering where her dad at. Ebony doesn't care about Lala and Carmelo Anthony's breakup. Her mother shoots crack in her neck. Ebony's knees are nailed to the floor every morning, praying she wakes up. Her aunt was a teacher, bringing in the cash, but budgets got slashed, so now she's laid off a pay cut. Granny's SSI check ain't feeding the whole fam, especially not Whole Foods, so it's honey buns, Huggy juices, and hot Cheetos for breakfast. This cancer ain't old news. Ebony's mom treat her siblings better because they have the lighter skin, so she believes the myth of black being whack and being white is a win. Ebony doesn't care or doesn't know about Jaden Smith holding his dreadlocks at the Met Gala. She's too concerned about consoling her friend who got raped by her cousin a few days ago. Her name's Kayla. Ebony only knows what goes on in the world around her. Why? She doesn't have the luxury of cell phones, computer, or Wi-Fi. Pay attention. No black models oiled up on our timeline and mentions. Around here, dreams get put on suspension like kids bringing knives to school. It's necessary, or else she would have died a fool. Hard times lead to broken rules, which turn angels to vultures. Open your eyes, I'm bringing you a lot closer to the people in my hood who are too poor for pop culture. I'm bringing you a lot closer to the people in my hood who are too poor for pop culture. There are tons of Brenda's babies who escaped the dumpster, but they still didn't make it. Poverty is a modern day slave ship with a little more leg room. We still shit and piss on one another. We get hand-me-down, broken heirlooms. We breathe the stale fumes. Land of the free. This is the land of free doom. Ebony tapped me on my shoulder and woke me out of my daydream and said, no, really, what's black girl magic? Thank you. I was a little rusty, you know, I just memorized that last night. So I appreciate y'all for listening. This second poem that I'm gonna do is a poem called Memories. It's an autobiographical poem about my life. By sharing what I go through, I help people, young people in particular, to see value in their lives so they can strive for something greater. So that's why I perform this poem, and that's why I always tell people, for every dark night, if there's a brighter day. So this poem is called Memories. Memories can be beautiful. Memories can be ugly. Sometimes I ask my memories, why didn't you love me? Memories, oh memories, they bring me much sorrow. But all I can do now is root for a better tomorrow. My teething ring was numb with madness and filled with nothing but sadness. I had it bad growing up for new parents I used to recommend. Because whenever my father was blazed up heroin or plastered off gin, he would look late nights on broad day, pull out guns and rob my own friends. Memories. I remember these memories just like that, laying on the living room floor watching Hey Arnold and Rugrats. 6 deep, the police came and burst through the back, fully equipped and strapped with black gats. It had to be bad luck cause I was the young black cat. My mother, she burnt pieces of my heart, and these missing pieces are what reflect on my art, like the stars coming out in the afternoon on a summer day at 1:15. That's how she violated her son. I will always receive bad news like the 757. Sometimes I wish I was a stillborn. I could have went straight to heaven and dodged all of these bullets that pierced my little lungs from these two son of a guns. I just want to relive my childhood and have some real fun. I don't need confusing metaphors and similes to paint you all my extremities. I just ask that when I die, that you all remember me. I remember on April 14, 2014, I received a call from my little brother Antoine that altered my entire life. He told me that my best friend got stabbed. So I hung up the phone, I dropped to my knees and started praying. He called me back 10 minutes later and started crying. I said, don't do this to me, Twan. Why are you lying? He said, lying about what? Ray Shaw, he's gone. I leave Baltimore and I go to Virginia hoping to clear my mind. But how can I when all of my friends are dropping like flies? Never have we been sweet, but these hibiscus on these streets are baking dudes like pies. It's hard to carry on when no one loves you. It's even harder when all your friends are floating above you. Lately, I've been dealing with constant wicked thoughts of suicide. Because every time I look at a picture of my friends, I see fewer guys. I don't need confusing metaphors and similes to paint you all my extremities. I just ask that when I die, that you all remember me. I remember like it was yesterday. My heart skipped a beat when I heard my mother call my grandmother a dirty trifling bitch and said, I hope you die in your sleep. So I said, enough is enough. I abruptly got up. Then God told me, shh, don't make one sound. Go lay your black narrow tail back down. It ain't over until I say it's over. I'm the DJ of this party life. And you know that I know when it was shut the party down. I remember my grandmother bought me a bike on my 13th birthday. My mother then stole and sold it the next day so she could go buy some drugs from Ray Ray. If I could just steal one wish from Ray J, it would be to spend a Christmas with both of my parents like Craig and Day. No Friday after next, but I remember on Easter Sunday, I was nearly grazed by a bullet from the victims my father ride right in front of my steps. Nothing I'm speaking is made up. Yes, I came up rough. Nothing I speak in my art is to make me look tough. I might have a little frame, but my mind is too buff. My head is only but so big. Sometimes I wonder how can it fit all this stuff. My mother will harass my grandmother for money so she could buy a blow. Whenever Granny said, me no I blow, no goodbye go, it would lead to cold nights like Chicago. So my mother would then burst out all of our windows. She the reason that today while my grandmother is dying slow. I'm sorry I can't fathom no more. I gotta go. And counting. Last month would have made 6 months that my mother has been clean. But don't get excited just yet, you'll comprehend what I mean. I said last month because this month she turned back to a fiend. Back to a junkie willing to get high by any means. She left my little siblings abandoned and the churches of Baltimore stranded. My little dogs were too young to know about cues, but she left their hearts branded. You don't need a pen or pencil to construct this sort of math when all I'm trying to say is I just want to relive my childhood with my mom and my dad. I was supposed to die in the belly of the beast. My mother was not supposed to have me. That's why I would not stop pursuing my passion until I won Granny a Grammy. I was once kidnapped by the streets. I broke away and I'm free. I say to all I have no fear. But the brighter side to this story is that I'm still here. I walk on God's green earth, 10 toes down. I do the best that I can do. Yes, I failed, but I also conquered. My uncle told me, Kondwani, you are a man, so don't ever look to blue for a clue. If the worst is bound to happen in spite of all that you can do, running from it will not save you. Make sure you see it through. Just like Sophia, all my life I had to fight. A boy child is not safe in a family filled with spite. The struggles I faced as a child is what helps me now to maintain. So I'm a fighting to the death until I'm the lone victor who remains. That's why I volunteer tribute to this life which I call a Hunger Games. I was born into a war and I've been brawling butt naked with nothing but my soul and my name. And from now until my bones crawl cold, y'all will never have to check the forecast, cause y'all will forever see my reign. Thank you. Before I go, I just want to say thank y'all for listening. I'm on all social media at Kondwani Fidel. Like I said, some copies of my book over there. But most importantly, I want to thank D. Watkins, for coming into my life and guiding me, throughout this literary world and just being that mentor for me, that my father's in prison. I'm 23 years old. D, he like 35, 40 years older than me, he definitely plays a major role in a lot of my decision making, and he always motivates me, so I definitely want to thank him and just keep supporting him. And like, this is my second time meeting Tony, and D only, talk good about good dudes, so when he was saying good stuff about Tony, I automatically liked him, because D liked him, and he played like the father figure in my life right now. So just thank y'all for coming out. Thank y'all for supporting us, man, because we all we got, we all we need. Y'all already know how it is, right? So just thank y'all again for listening.
He gave the acknowledgement because he was supposed to do 1 point, but he stole 2. But we not complaining. No, one more round of applause for him. So you want to go ahead and start with Slugg, and then I can talk about the cook-up, or?
Sure, however you want to
cool.
do it.
That's
but
cool.
before, if I can just have, what's up, everybody? How we doing out there? Really quickly, though, I just want to acknowledge the brilliant, incomparable legend in my mind, D. Watkins, not only for his art, his contribution to, and I think sometimes it's limited. We just, not just Baltimore, but America, and your work, man, and then also your willingness to help other people, bro. And I really see that as a measurement of a man. So for you to share your stage with us tonight, I think is it's amazing, but it's also just indicative of what I've seen you to be, man. And you inspire me, bro. So thank you, man. I appreciate that. Can we give D. Watkins a big round of applause? And I mean that with every fabric in my soul. Also, I never do this. I just want to acknowledge my lovely wife. Hi, Jessica. How are you? Slugg, A Boy's Life in the Age of Mass Incarceration. It's my memoir. It really tracks my life from pretty much my inception up to the age of 33. And I wrote the book to do, in my opinion, I wanted to give a comprehensive view of not just mass incarceration, but its real impacts, and its impacts on families and communities and ultimately our country. And not from the perspective of the inmate, but the perspective of a boy whose father went to prison early in his life, and really talk about the collateral damage that caused. And I felt like I wasn't just telling my story, but I was telling the stories of millions of children in this country with an incarcerated parent, and millions of people that grow up in communities like the one I grew up in here in the District of Columbia. And, you know, I really wanted to tie in, you know, how related, you know, gun violence, mental health, gentrification, how tied those things are to mass incarceration and the things, the systems that caused it. So yeah, that's pretty much a synopsis of Slugg. I do. All right. So I'm gonna read a piece, and so a lot of times I think people who are familiar or somewhat familiar with me and my activism, they know that my father was a major drug kingpin here in the District of Columbia, and I think people thought that Slugg would be about that, and I really couldn't understand that. I felt like people should know me better than that I would just write a book filled with how much cocaine my father sold. So this passage is when my dad went to prison. Shortly after that, in so many ways, the stress of the situation took my mother away from me as well. We got carjacked, and so I'm starting from the time describing, not this after I described the carjacking itself, right? He took our car, my mother's precious 190 Benz, the last big material possession of our old life. But the incident did more than that. It confirmed my mother's worst fears and justified her paranoia. The screen in her that filtered reality and unreality was torn away. The carjacking broke her, and we were never the same. Her condition wasn't apparent to me right away, though. A week or so after the incident, we seemed to get back to us, to what had become our life, with just the two of us. Then the first episode happened. It was a nightmare, and we were in our apartment in New Carrollton. I was in my room, and she was in hers. Our rooms were side by side. Lying in my bed, I heard my mother talking to someone. It kind of sounded like a conversation she would have with one of her girlfriends. I had my own phone in my room, so slowly I picked the receiver up and brought it up to my ear to find out who she was talking to. But all I heard was a steady hum of the dial tone. I knew she was talking to somebody. I could hear her having a conversation. She was saying, "That bitch Karen set me up. She had that motherfucker come and take our car. I'm gonna kill those motherfuckers if they fuck with my son. Everybody just jealous of me because I'm rich. They all mad because I got money." I didn't know what to think. So I softly set the receiver back down and on his base and walked into my mother's room. When I entered her room, I saw that she was talking to herself. Yet something about it wasn't right. Something about it was different. I stood there and stared for a moment. I watched her go on talking as if someone else other than me was there to listen, as if someone other than me was responding to her. She was having a full-out conversation. Confused, I was hardly able to form words to speak. When I composed myself, I said, "Ma, who are you talking to?" She looked at me and responded, "Huh? Boy, what you talking about?" "Right now, Ma." Like, just then, who were you talking to? But the conversation went nowhere. It was my first time trying to speak rationally with her in that state, and I was taken aback by it. She flat out denied that she was talking to herself and made me feel like I was the one in the wrong. All out of sorts, I turned around and I went back in my room. That's a passage just talking about, this is the beginning of my mother's mental illness. That's something that I think is left out of the conversation. The stress is left on women to take care of their children, to maintain bills, to coexist in communities that sometimes are violent and people are preyed upon. So I wanted to utilize it was very difficult for me to even go there to really expose or talk about some of those dark moments, but I felt it was necessary. Another passage that I want to read really quickly is about, we hear about mass incarceration, but I wanted to present a life experience for me that truly encompass what that really looks like in real time, right? What that feels like in real time when you come from a community like mine where so many people go to prison. And I also wanted to talk about the impacts of visiting prisons. So this one story, I think, for me, encompassed this. When Uncle Greg went back to prison in 2001, he was sent to USP meaning United States Penitentiary, Allenwood. Once when a few of us were going to visit him there, Grandma got turned away because she had undergone 2 knee replacements, and the metal in her body kept setting off the metal detector. She had forgotten her medical card, which explained her condition, and had to miss the visit. Having fully patted her down and searched her over and over, they still couldn't take the chance of letting her through. We understood, but after a 4-hour drive for an old woman wanting to see her son, it was a big letdown. There was another time when going to see Uncle Greg, we stopped to get something to eat before arriving. Uncle Alvin had taken some of his high blood pressure medicine and his food and didn't think anything about it. Well, when we got to the prison, they're not only checking for weapons, but also drugs and other contraband. To test for drugs, they run a cloth over your pockets and your hands, and then run that through a machine. Doc, which we call my Uncle Alvin, didn't have any drugs on him, but the residue on his hands from his high blood pressure medication was enough to have him turned away. My family was aging, and we were still making the trip. Knee replacements, high blood pressure pill residue were things we didn't have to think about before. Now we do. My cousin Rico and my Uncle Lo, who was my Uncle Boo's wife Monica's brother, were also incarcerated at Allenwood with Uncle Greg. Coincidentally, my barber and good friend, also named Rico, had an uncle incarcerated at Allenwood as well. Rico's Uncle Darren, who was serving a life sentence, Rico is 9 years older than me and is from the northeast section of Washington, D.C. Before he moved into his own shop, he used to cut hair around my way. That's how we met. We've grown close over the years. One of the ways we've bonded was by taking those road trips to Allenwood together to visit our uncles. On one of those road trips to Allenwood in late 2011, Rico came along with me and my family, including Grandma, Uncle Alvin, Nikki, and her son Dominique, and my cousin Kim. I requested Rico, my cousin. Grandma, Doc, and Nikki requested Uncle Greg. Kim requested Uncle Lo, and Rico requested his Uncle Darren. With everyone in the visiting room together at some point, I had a moment to step back and look at the scene. There was a man from both sides of my family, another one who married into my family, and a friend of the family, all incarcerated in the same place. Of course, I knew this before being in the visiting room with all of them, but seeing them all together was striking. 3 out of the 4 men, excluding my cousin Rico, was serving life without the possibility of parole. It was one of those disturbing moments where I almost couldn't believe my eyes. Based on those 4 gentlemen, my Uncle Greg was shortly after that visit that I spoke about, commit suicide on January 1st, 2012. My Uncle Lo did receive a time cut, so he no longer has life without parole. My barber, his uncle still has life without parole. And I'm extremely excited and proud to say that my cousin Rico is seated right here in the front row. So everybody, let's say welcome home to Rico.
You know what I respect about Tony so much, and it's like the exact same thing with my brother David Manigault back there, is that it's one thing to talk about these issues, and it's one thing to make little posts and take screenshots of little pretty memes and throw them up, right? But it's another thing to really have proximity to people. If you go through DC with Tony Lewis know people. If you walk down Miami Street with David Manigault know people. If you go anywhere in East Baltimore with any of the people that came here with me today, or West Baltimore, anywhere that's in our section of the city, we work with people. It's not about talking. Quantifiable goals. What are you doing? How have you touched someone's life? So when I come to town and I see this man, I can look at the pride and how the people feel when they talk to him and when they greet him and the love they have for him. And that's a real thing. We got to start holding these mouthpieces accountable. You know, so can we give a round of applause to this brother again and shout out, you know. So I'm gonna talk about the cook up really quick and then we can jump right in the conversation, but I got all these microphones. I'm gonna I know I got a big mouth. So I'm gonna read from his microphone, but I'll tell you about my book, and you know, we could talk about how these two projects are connected and get into a deeper conversation about how trash the war on drugs is, how racist Nixon and his policy director was, who said they just created it to destroy black people, and some of the things we can do moving forward today, because again, quantifiable goals. How can we fix these things? Everybody knows the problem. Everybody's a master of stats. We get it. You got Google. You memorize memes. You know, you took an online course. We get it. Now it's how we helping people. So the cook up is, yeah, all right, cool. So this book is very simple. It's not complex. It's not about the glorification of selling drugs. It's not about, you know, my glory days and bragging about a certain type of car or certain type of sneaker, whatever. It's not really about that. It's about the redemptive power of education and the redemptive power of art. We don't get that. I didn't grow up in a culture of education. Education as a survival skill and a way to develop coping mechanisms, but not education as a tool to create better opportunities for me and my family members and for my neighborhood, to uplift my neighborhood, to, you know, see a young kid walking down the street and say, Shorter, you should read that book. Or young lady, you should check out these poets, or you should check out these books. I didn't have that coming up. And when I got that, it transformed me. And this is what I talk about in that book. It's also a love letter to how strong the black women are that kept the communities that I know together. You know, it's all, without the grandmothers and the wives and the mothers and the sisters and the baby mothers, all of us would have been gone. The first person you call when you need that bail, the first person to pump you up when you do something good, and the first person you should be there for once you get to the place where you're supposed to be at, who you're really supposed to be holding down. So it's a love letter to those women who actually were strong enough to help us fight through these situations and the rewards and the roses they deserve. And then last but not least is acknowledgement to how simple or how easy it is for a goofy kid from whatever neighborhood and whatever city to get caught up in one of the deadliest games in the world. There's no such thing as a super predator. I don't know what the fuck Hillary Clinton was talking. Oh, it's kids in here, sorry. I don't know what the F, my bad, Brandy. I don't know what the F Hillary Clinton was talking about. Like, this is regular everyday kids get caught up in it all of the time. Regular good women and good children and good people, we got caught up in this. It swooped through our neighborhood, and it had such a dense presence that we almost felt like it was the only option that many of us had, so it's not about demonizing the people who got caught up in it, but it's about blaming the people that created it and then coming up with the solutions for the victims. I don't victim blame. So I'll read you like a little bit of the book to give you the tone. It's quick. At times the book can be really depressing. I can't lie to you. At times, So at times, the book can be really depressing, but then sometimes it's like funny too. So in the midst of your crying and your snot bubbles, you might laugh. So it's good. Can I, yeah, this is yours? All right, cool. I'll slide up a little bit. 'Cause I know I knocked down. Can you hear me in the back? All right, cool. So I'll read you the first 2 chapters, and if the chapters are very short by design, and I did that because I want a person to say, oh, I'm gonna read one more chapter before I go to bed, and then they look up and they read like 17. The Cook Up. I saw bullets rip through the faces of adolescents. I saw mothers abandon their kids. I saw fathers go out for milk to never return. I saw kids turn into killers. Cops steal, and grandparents raise infants around here. I saw kids slap spit out of adults. I saw the devil. I saw a guy shake a guy's hand before whipping out his gun and making that same guy put his hands up. We go through midlife crises at 15 around here. I saw friends kill friends. I really saw friends kill friends and then attend their wakes. I saw teachers tell kids that they die like their parents were siblings. What does hope look like? I saw shot dudes in wheelchairs be shot again while they sat in their wheelchairs. I saw shots that made bodies flip. I saw colostomy bags burst, guts spill, brains on the curb, brains on the wall, brains by the car, contusions, limbs knocked off, faces rearranged, eyeballs, small intestines, and flesh chunks. We all self-medicate around here. I saw murder after murder after murder. I smelled murder. We had 150 collective obituaries by the time we turned 18. They all had short, one-paragraph bios. I saw barefoot families. I saw drug money by churches. I saw hoop dreams spark and fade. I saw all types of dreams spark and fade. I saw house raids. I saw families evicted. I saw AIDS spread. I saw thousands made and lost right in the middle of a place where police collect, enforce, and terrorize. I saw it. I saw it all. Chapter 1. Bang, bang, bang. My Aunt Kim's door almost thumped off the hinges. I was rolling a celebratory blunt because College Park, University of Maryland, Loyola, and a bunch of other schools were letting me in. Kim, cut the music down, I said, looking through the peephole. I opened the door without removing the latch to see Ron G prop both hands on his knees like kickstands, his oval belly peeking out of his shirt. Ron, what the hell is wrong with you? I said. He breathed heavily. Find your father, find your father. They shot your brother, go find him. His pudgy face pinching through my door. What? I opened the door to let him in, but he continued down the hallway shouting, looking for my dad. I didn't believe what Ron said. My brother's not dead. Did I hear shots? East Baltimore's like a gun range. I always heard shots. Shots rang out in East Baltimore all day, especially when it's hot outside. People always get shot, but not my brother. Ron, he's crazy. Hey, Kim, you're not going to believe this. Ron really done lost his goddamn mind. You had to be crazy to shoot at my brother. He was the neighborhood dope man, a real star. He employed everyone, paid cops, and fed and housed ex-cons until they can feed and house themselves. He was like Al Superman mixed with Jesus. Plus, Ron G's stupid. I think he dropped out of school in kindergarten. Plus, he's on acid, sherm, loose pills, and some other stuff. It probably wasn't even my brother, I thought. As a matter of fact, I called his cell phone just to tell him how stupid Ron was, but I kept getting the voicemail. You reached the right guy at the wrong time. Leave a message, 1. Hey, Kim, stay here real quick and let me see what's going on. I'm going to try to go outside and make sure everything's okay. She was all frowned up like, be careful. My brother and I aren't her children, but she treated us like we were. I felt her anxiety twirl in my chest as I left out the front door. Please, baby, be careful, she called again as I walked out. Bit was driving a T-Top Z300 that day. He bought it from a car wholesaler named Seth. Seth was known for getting cars with clean titles and untraceable paperwork for young dealers. He helped my brother get that 300, a GS, and my father's cars too. The front of our house was like a bootleg NBA practice facility. My brother's car was whiter than untouched snow with identical shade on the wheels, and it had white piping, and the inside was reupholstered with beet juice colored leather. Everyone knew his car. It was double parked in front of the corner store called CC's with the hazards on, so I know he was in a gathering crowd. I couldn't wait to tell him how stupid Ron was. More importantly, I couldn't wait to tell him how I got into college. He's gonna flip over the number of schools that I gained acceptance to, especially since none of the guys in our family ever went to college. My brother was probably in the store pushing up on some girl. He was on a mission to book and bone every woman we weren't related to. Herc, my best friend, and one of my brother's workers spotted me swimming through the mob. Herc towers over all of us like an NBA player. His knuckles practically scrape the ground when he walks. D, oh God, D, he cried. Running up on me like a crazed fan, his face was bald and confused. His dreads were whipping in every which direction. He squeezed me hard like he was trying to make my shoulders touch. D, I'm gonna kill those guys that got your brother. I swear to God, I'm gonna kill him. Tears scaled his face. I remained silent, but the crowd didn't. My brother's not dead, and Herc is just looking for trouble. He's been like that since we were 2. He screamed and pulled me as I yanked away. I had to get him off of me because I needed to get to the crowd so I could make sure my brother was okay. I knew if I just walked past the gossipers, everything would be good. I thought he was probably stuck in the corner store because there was a million people blocking the door. I elbowed my way through the mob. Everyone gazed at me like I walked in class late. Wet eyes and bent fences circled the scene. I inched closer. The Koreans who ran CC's carryout clutched their babies while peeking through the cage door. A young black man laid on the ground, covered by a steel sheet. The dead kid had on orange and white Charles Barkley sneakers, freckled with blood poking out. That could have been anybody. Everybody in the hood had those. I'm wearing them right now. An ambulance worker moved the body and his arm dangled out. I saw my brother's two-tone bracelet. I ducked under the yellow tape and pushed past the beat cop. I pulled the sheet down a little further as I inched closer. The noise stopped. A cold silence blanketed the crowd. Bip, get up, I begged. Come on, man, get up. Come on, man, wake up. It was the first time he ever ignored me. Please, yo, I begged. The beat cop gathered himself and slammed me down next to my brother. I didn't fight back. I wish I died too. Yeah, so it starts with one of the best days of my life and one of the worst days of my life, and how they kind of ended up being the same thing. But then it goes on a journey of some of the fake stereotypes about the narrative that come with doing certain street stuff, and then like I said, the redemptive power of art and things like that. So that's the Cook Up, and this is the portion where we open the conversation up.
Thank you both, first and foremost. Could you elaborate more on the redemptive power of art, I think you said, and how that could help, with whatever mission we're trying to do?
So one of the reasons why I think mentor is so important is because when I was growing up, like right now, I get a chance I work on TV segments, I'm working in film, I'm a college professor, I get the opportunity to do a lot of things that I never saw coming up. So it's important to me, accessibility is the thing. I didn't know, or I grew up for the bulk of my life thinking that my story wasn't relevant. My neighborhood was irrelevant. We just a bunch of black people stuck in a city that nobody care about, and we all gonna die, and it doesn't even matter. And when I started seeing a lot of people not only tell stories about people from my neighborhood, but I saw people taking interest in some of the things we were going through and applying them to this bigger context, it transformed me as a person. Like, I didn't know my story had any relevance, and today I got an opportunity to use that story to help a lot of people. So that change came from just me understanding how important my family was, how important I am, how important my community is, how important the people who came before me were, and some of the things that happened to them, and acknowledging that it really wasn't their fault. So that's kind of how it transformed me and a lot of people that I work with. Did that answer the question? It was kind of that type of situation. So As far as like reading, critical thinking, just appreciating all of these different things, you know, I'm in my early 20s walking around, and none of these things meant anything to me. Like, none of these things meant anything to me. And when I started to, you know, and what did it for me was Sister Soldier's book, The Coldest Winter Ever. So that lit the candle that turned into me burning down like a whole forest worth of books. And, you know, I'm thankful for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Dee, for sharing this evening. As someone who works in policy, particularly as it relates to mass incarceration, I'm wondering where you all think, or if you all think that there's capacity for people who share, for you all, number one, and then for folks who share your experiences around actually working to change the laws that lead to people getting locked up with sentences like life without parole.
Yeah, I think that is extremely important to change laws and policies that you know is particularly related to, but not solely related to, nonviolent drug offenses. But also, I think it's equally or even more important to change the dynamics of the things that drive people to get involved in the lifestyle that lead to prison in the first place. So when we talk about access to opportunities and things that everybody who knows me know that I fight for, you know, in terms of having communities that have people that are professionals in them, and having kids that grew up with me and Dee grew up in, to really know and feel that anything is possible. And it's not something that you hear people on TV say. That's very important. And I feel like it really starts from seeing the people in the communities like the one we come from as just like people in communities like Potomac. You know what I mean? I pray that Slugg would be a reflection of the humanity that exists. And just like, for example, I went to Gonzaga College High School, and some social justice class read my book this semester, right? And about 10 of the students wrote my dad letters based on how they were impacted by Slugg. And every letter spoke about how they were almost shocked that the way I described our relationship was the way that they saw their relationship with their fathers, as if that's an impossibility where we come from. If you're a drug dealer, how could you have a strong relationship with your son, right? And so this is what we have to work around that, because we can change sentencing all we want, but as long as people continue to go to prison, we're not gonna get the results that we really know that we want. So we have to really stop people from going to prison, and also those that have had some transgressions in their past, when they return to our community from prison, we have to keep them here.
Hello. I just want to thank you guys both for coming. I first heard you speak at the Social Innovation Conference at Light City, and I really enjoyed what you had to say last year. I was just wondering if you could kind of share your opinion on, both of you could share your opinions on, what do you think it's going to take to continue bridging the gap between struggling areas in both DC and Baltimore and the gentrified, beautiful areas in both DC and Baltimore? Because I think that events like Light City and events like these are great, but what sort of action items would you suggest to people who are cognizant of the difference between the two?
So one, we shot a video with Tony talking about those solutions that came out on Salon.com today, and you know, I think he has some really good answers. Two, and I'm going to pass him the mic, but real quick, I'm really glad you said that, and that's my issue with events like Light City. A lot of times, people think because I came to a book talk or I came to a panel, I can change. Now I changed the world. I took 5 minutes. I took an hour out of my day, maybe 35 minutes for parking around here, right? I came, I heard some people talk, and then I can just, you know, and now I feel like I made a difference. Well, do I want support? Of course I want support. Does this man want support? Of course he wants support. Like, we all want to sell out We all want to sell our projects, and we all want to, continue to do the work that we do. But this is just one part. So what I do to resist that is I don't partner and work with a lot of big exploitive organizations. Like my manager can tell you, they all send emails to do these types of things, and I don't do a lot of these things, especially when I'm back home, because that's not where the real work happens. I go inside of schools. And I preach the power of critical thinking. I don't preach the power of critical thinking that's like, the at the school Big Brother program. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't preach it as just a person that's talking. I preach it as a person that's creating a language that's accessible. They use this book in Baltimore City Public Schools, but they use it at Harvard too. And I get the opportunity to be able to share these stories with those different populations, but then to show people why they need these skills and to put it in context on how nobody will ever be able to make it past anything without that. So I think I don't think anything's gonna happen from the bottom down. From my perspective, I don't have animosity or hate towards politicians. I just don't have time. Politics takes really long for me. Like all of my friends that work in policy and that advocate, they're very important, and I got love for them and I support them. And when they come around to me and tell me to write a check, I write a check for them. But I'm instant cash. I need to see, you hungry? Oh shit, here's a sandwich. I need to see instant results. So my thing is is how can I be accessible? How can I work in these schools? How can I get kids to develop these skills? And how can I talk to more people who are achieving things to get them excited about staying in Baltimore City instead of trying to find success out in a suburb or a county, because that's really, as a lot of people see, it's not always really success. They end up not finding success out there.
I mean, that's a large question. I mean, my advice would be, right, first of all, it's just about, we talked about the humanity, right, and really caring, right, really when we're moving into these communities or into these cities, really thinking about who was there before you got there, who in turn, and then also who's still there, right, and just as simple, I'd be starting with hello. I'm in my neighborhood, I see people just walk past, each other. Right, and because this is already this preconceived notion of who you are, who we are, and nobody ever talks. But in terms of resources, when you talk about organizations that's working in these communities, that's working around housing, that's working around employment, that's working with individuals impacted by mass incarceration or reentry, it's about lending your resources, whether it's a financial thing, whether it's writing a check, whether it's volunteering to teach, tech skills, whether it's calling your council member and as a white millennial, letting them know that reentry is important to you and asking them why, the native Washingtonian, black people in Washington, why is the unemployment rate 15%, and the unemployment rate for the native Washingtonian is probably double or triple that. Those are the kind of things that we can do, that you can do, and it's not about just showing up to things like this. This is great, but we really have to think about that. We got to think about how in 1990 or even in 2000, the black population was 65%, and now it's 48%. You know what I mean? You got to think about that and be concerned about that. You got to think about the funding at Woodrow Wilson versus the funding at Anacostia. You got to think about that. We got to look at our kids' test scores. All that stuff has to be of your concern. You may not even have kids. Your kids may not even go to public school, but you need to show that you care about it, that these issues aren't just ours. And I think that's what we see a lot. That when people like myself or D are being a voice, it's expected. You know what I mean? I remember my uncle told me he was in Vietnam, and he told me about how when they were there, they would watch the news, and you would see protests. There was a lot of college kids protesting. But when people's moms, the mothers of the guys who died, started to get out there, it changed the dynamic. Or when white people started to march during the civil rights, it changed the dynamic. In order for certain people to really respond, it can't just be the people that's been the most impacted. And then I talk a lot about the fact that sometimes it seems as if, people don't want us to tell our own story, which is the most frightening. because if you don't get it from us, you're not getting it in its entirety. You're not getting the real. Both of these books is part of that as well, right? To tell a perspective that's really not shared, because it can't be. And we look up and you see our peers are not around us. That's not a cool feeling. When you look at if you don't know, like where you are right here, right? Everything around here, and some of you may live around here, everything around here, this used to be almost 100% black community right here. Not long ago, not 50, not 100 years ago. You understand what I'm saying? In recent time. And we've been erased in this city. Literally. And normally when we hear conversations about DC residents in terms of those that participate in the process, it's old black people and young white people. It's not me. It's not my generation. So that has to be important, and not just for our sake, right? Or for it's also about Washington. If you care about DC, you care about public safety, you care about our way of life, if you care about your children and my children, the city that they're going to grow up in, right, it's important that, we start to do certain things and really want to bridge the gap. But again, I think in my mind, a lot of that just starts with a simple hello. And not talk, it's just weird to me when I hear people talk about Black DC as like Ward 7 and 8. And it'd be like crazy, but that's become the reality. But for me, people grew up here, like the whole Washington was black. And I'm okay, like like on the Salon.com piece we did, like, and I'm sorry to be long-winded, but we talked about a lot about, we have a window, I feel, like an immediate window though, like a window of like 6 months to a year, where we have to start building those bridges. If we don't build those bridges that we're talking about in the next 6 months to a year in this city, it won't be any, salvaging the situation. And I think the city needs to decide really what they want to do. And we read stats about we've given more money back to HUD. We got a housing crisis, a homeless crisis, and we gave $15.8 million back to HUD, more than any jurisdiction in America. Things like that is unacceptable, and that's what I'm saying. You need to voice that you're not okay with that. I don't care if you've been here 5 minutes. You need to acknowledge that is a problem when we have thousands of homeless families living in a shelter with bed bugs. You know what I mean? So that's my answer to that question.
Social worker, and I think if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I think a lot of young kids, and I've worked with kids in Washington, D.C. who are committed to the courts because of criminal activity. I don't want to get into a long diatribe about that because it was a horrible experience, not because of the kids, but because of the administration. And I think a number of kids actually suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. It is not normal to be under 21 years of age to have known a large number of people who've died. I mean, that is definitely PTSD. I don't live in D.C. because I can't afford to live in D.C. But I am truly committed to working with, I don't want to say I wouldn't work with anybody, but particularly people of color. Because I'm piggybacking on you, how on earth could you have people living in a bloody homeless shelter? I mean, that is just god-awful, sinful. And when I was working with the kids in D.C., the D.C. public school system would pass kids on who couldn't read. You're 14 or 15, you couldn't read. And I'm talking about some really, really bright kids. Because if you can be out on that street selling those drugs, which you're not a dumb buddy. I mean, you are super brilliant. So again, I mean, it's my passion to work with people, young kids, to really be a part of their growth and development. So thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Tony and Dee, for coming out this evening. I had a quick comment to piggyback on the young lady's question about bridging the gap. Myself, I'm from Anacostia, but I've been gone for 10 years after school, going to college in Miami and then moving out to LA for work. But I think what we can do as a millennial, we got to move back to the city, to our neighborhood. Like I know, I just got here last month and I see Mr. Tony, you know, he's from Hanover. He on the street. He's showing you. I moved back home for everybody, for the neighbors can see him, the kids, doing cleanup in the streets, activism and all that. And the same thing for Mr. D. I followed your page and also, seeing you out in your old neighborhood, doing activism and showing your face. You ain't move away. I left because, some situation with my brother, he was locked up for 9 years, so I felt I had to get away. So I ran from the problem. The only way to get through it, you got to go through it. So I came back home with my daughter, my mother, helping out the business and teaching what I learned in Miami. Because one thing I learned from my counterparts who are from China, Texas, Nairobi, they all went back home and taught engineering. So what I can do as an entrepreneur and a restaurant owner, I come back and do that same thing in Anacostia. So I want to commend y'all for what y'all do and also tell other millennials in here to move back home. Wherever you from, go back and build. Don't ask Tony, don't ask D and Tony to do your work. You got to do it for yourself and your family.
Hi, I'm a Ward 1 resident. I was committed to the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services a long time ago, like 2011, and I received a non-accredited high school diploma while committed to the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Service. I raised this concern with the council member, which is the chairman of education, and what he told me was that basically, so I raised this concern to the council member, and what they're telling me is from an educational perspective, there's nothing that they can do. So it's perfectly legal to miseducate us, to miseducate me, and then it's like now I'm like in this bind, like, okay, what do I do now?
Well, I appreciate that comment. I think, definitely something that we definitely should look into. I can't understand why DYRS would be given unaccredited. For everybody in the room, DYRS, the Department of Youth and Rehabilitative Services, is our juvenile justice system, basically. So if you incarcerated as a juvenile, you're under DYRS's supervision, right? And so what the young lady is speaking about is that she was incarcerated as a juvenile, and she went to the school she's saying that she obtained her high school diploma, but they're not accredited. And so, yeah, that's definitely something I will personally talk to the director about that. I don't know if that's still the practice. I don't know if that's still within DYRS. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
I must thank you guys for this evening. I'm not from the United States. I'm from the Caribbean. And a lot of the issues you guys are dealing with, to a certain extent, I come from a very small island, St. Martin, which has been overrun by tourism, with all of the catastrophic consequences of that, of confused culture, selfishness, breakup of community. Some of the issues you guys were touching on, and all of the consequences that follow out of that, right? A lot of kids being left behind, falling apart, et cetera, et cetera. But the question that I really want to ask you guys is, you all touched on it, and I think it's an important question. I used to live out in LA before I came to DC, and I would be confronted constantly with that because I'm from a small Dutch French island, and I studied law in the Netherlands, and I worked a little bit as a lawyer in the Netherlands before I came to DC, before I came to LA. And they would ask me about this drug war business. And I think D. Watkins said, in his book, he said it is basically garbage, it's nonsense, right? In the Netherlands, obviously, it's a total different way of dealing with drugs. You do not get locked up for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, at least when I was there. It simply didn't happen. A lot of drug is simply dealt with in a very, very, more a human kind of rehabilitation type of fashion than a punishing fashion. But the issue that I want to ask you guys about, because it's an issue that I heard again and again in LA, is the role that the cops play in the African-American communities. The brutality, the viciousness, the lack of rules and regulations concerning it. I was constantly confronted with people asking me what would happen if this had happened in the Netherlands. And honestly, these cops would have gotten themselves locked up. Although, at this point in time, again, with a growing minority community in Europe, and in France, we see a lot of the situation that happening now in the African American community start to happen there too. The jails are full of black and brown people there. So the role of the cops, obviously at present we have a Attorney General who seemingly wants to go back to a hard way of doing things again, so that we can really end up very quickly with a mass incarceration of African American people. So how do you see? Would you follow what I'm saying? One of my ideas with policing would be that cops play, as they originally played in the United States, a more social welfare role, right? You go in a community, sometimes you are the only governmental presence in a community for a long period of time, that you say, look, there are problems in this community, this, and that these guys could write social reports. Say, a lot of kids hanging out here, this problem here, et cetera. Let's pass this on to others who can do more things together.
You talking about like police reform?
The hope would be police reform. But
no, they need to be gutted. Like, they need to just throw them all. These police officers in this country are trash. Like, they need to just throw them all in the dumpster and just let them stay there and start fresh, because it doesn't work. So let me tell you about what I do. One of my jobs, I got 12 jobs. One of my jobs, I host a podcast called The Killing of Freddie Gray, where I work with a group of other investigative journalists, and we comb the neighborhood, we pull CCTV footage, we interview people. Some other journalists did like a different part of the investigation where I host the addendum and continue it with other people. And we basically did everything that the prosecutors couldn't do, or what the police officers the crooked police officers who investigated themselves couldn't do. We solved the case. It's very simple. They killed that man. If he was a white person jogging through the street, you're good. You want to stay in shape. You're a black person jogging through the street, you're a criminal. The knife he was allegedly caught with, which I think, in my personal opinion, because I've looked at a whole lot of knives, I think that was a police knife that was planted. Either way, it was a legal knife. So if I'm a white person that has a knife, maybe I want to carve an apple. Maybe I want to carve my name in the side of an oak tree. Maybe I like sliced bananas. But if I'm a black person, I'm some type of murderer. So all of that shit is bullshit. So I don't what I do is, again, I support people who fight for reform and do these things, but I don't work with them. Hosting a podcast for the police officers involved in that case their lawyers are sending us letters for defamation, threatening to sue us now. The main reason is because we named it The Killing of Freddie Gray, but it's it's illegal to say murder, but it's not illegal to say killing. But either way, he didn't kill himself. He didn't chase himself. He didn't slam himself. He didn't put his own knee in his own neck and snap his spinal column. He didn't throw himself in the back of that van, and he wasn't taking on that ride. He didn't do it to himself. These 6 incompetent people did it. But now, since this system, this broken trash system has freed them, not only are they trying to sue people like me for delivering truth, but they suing the prosecutor, they suing Mosby for pressing charges on them. Which is it might look like it's not big news and people not really covering this, but they basically setting the precedent for what can happen across the country, where every DA across the whole America is going to be scared to charge police officers in fear of losing his or her job. So it's I don't see any, and people say oh, well, there's a good cop, this officer, something. I don't know him. I never, ever called the police in my life unless I need an insurance claim report. Because they're not worth nothing. They're not good for anything. And people say, well, you can't have a lawless society. They don't protect me. The fuck I need them for? So I think they just need to gut it and redo it. I also think that citizen review boards need to be implemented, especially and not only in every community, but in every black community across this country, because they're not held accountable. I started writing about this dirty cop named Daniel Herschel 3 or 4 years ago, right? And me and these other 2 reporters was writing about, we wrote about everything, because the city paid $250,000 in settlements. They paid $250,000 in settlements for his misconduct. So it was cases when you read through the court cases, he was at a bar, he poured beer on a lady, slapped across the head with a bottle. He was searching for drugs in somebody's car, broke the arm. It was a lady selling church raffle tickets. He locked her up because he thought she was selling dope. She really had legit church raffle tickets. So let's put this in context. We pay $250,000 to protect the kid, on his behalf, because he's an idiot. Then we pay his salary. And then these dudes are still getting promotion and raises, so we got to pay all that. And I'm like, damn, you know, if I broke somebody's arm at work, would I get a promotion or would they lock me up? You know what I mean? So they get to operate in this world and they don't have to be held accountable for anything. So it's like, when it comes to police, I don't have anything but anger, bitterness, and bad things to say. Like, they don't even come up in my conversation because they've been worthless to me. Sorry, I'm jaded.
I met a couple good cops in my life. But no, I think underestimate what we go through with police officers. And like, even in the book, I talk about my relationship with this one police officer who literally, like, he hunted me, like, in a way in which he tried everything he could to plant things on me, to lock me up, like, a period of like 6-7 years. I'm talking about from when I'm a kid up into early adulthood, and that this is a real life example, and we don't really reconcile, but we come to a point where he was able to see me as a human being. Once one of the officers that I really have a lot of respect for, when I started working, and her and I did some community work together, and he was like in disbelief. But again, in our neighborhoods, police don't protect us. Police, and we look at it, police take the people that we love, they treat us we're children, 9-10 years old, and we're looked at as criminals and treated as such, searched illegally, searched to the point where you really could charge them with, you know, a sex crime, to be honest with you. And you go through this day, every day. This is not isolated, sometimes 3-4 times a day. And then on top of that, when we in this age, we see things on camera, and we see them literally murdering people and nothing happens. And then now when we start talking about on a bigger level, we talk about Jeff Sessions and President Trump, who in some, you know, any type of potential, you know, reform, and I'm also not a big reform guy, but I think we really need to change the way, we really need to start fighting crime with services, or quote unquote crime with services and resources versus police, because they're not, again, 2 months ago in my gentrified neighborhood, right? A lifelong friend of mine got killed, about 100 shots went off. They ain't protect him, and they sit on my block every day. This is what I'm talking, there's things like that happens. And so black people, poor people, right? Growing up in communities with this police presence, but you never see police stop anything. So again, it's so much that needs to, I sense that we really need to, take a different approach in the way that we police. But I'm gonna tell you the other, in closing, the more, and this is also, I hear a lot of times people talking about outside of police, when people talk about like saving children. If we don't save adults, if we don't help adults be their best, you know what I mean? Because when I talk about adults, what I mean is men, and particularly black men, right? We can govern ourselves. We can police our own communities if we did. That's what we need. That's what I police my own community. I police my own family, my own home. And if there's a lot of men on my block like me, we'll be better off. So to me, that's part of the solution as well.